You know, when we think about water, shortages, failing infrastructure, you name it, it feels like such a modern crisis, right? But what if I told you this is one of the oldest challenges civilization has ever faced? We're about to dive into the hidden history of how we've engineered our world around water, and it's a story that goes all the way back to myths, gods, and some truly mind-blowing human ingenuity. So get this, in one of the oldest stories ever written down, the Mesopotamian Atrahasis epic, the lesser gods literally go on strike. And what was their job? Digging canals to irrigate the land. The work was so massive, so backbreaking, that it was actually considered the work of the gods.
So, how do you solve a divine labor strike? Well, according to the myth, the solution was us. Yep, humanity was created for one single purpose: to take on this godly burden. From the very beginning, our whole reason for being was to be water engineers, managing the flow of life for everyone.
Before there were civil engineers with blueprints, they were gods of rain and rivers. See, long before we figured out the physics of water, we turned to mythology to try and make sense of this incredibly powerful force, something that could give life, but also take it away with floods and droughts.
And this wasn't just a one-off thing. Oh no. In Mesopotamia, you had Enki controlling freshwater. For the Egyptians, the god Hapi was the Nile. The Aztecs lived in fear of the rain god Tlaloc. The big takeaway here is that every single great early civilization put a powerful deity in charge of water. That tells you just how central and, frankly, how terrifying it was to their survival.
But of course, humanity wasn't going to rely on myths forever. Sooner or later, prayer gives way to pipes. And absolutely no one took that divine burden and turned it into an engineering marvel quite like the Romans. They didn't just hope for water, they moved it across entire landscapes. To get a sense of what the Romans pulled off, just think about this number. At its height, a city like Ephesus was home to 250,000 people. A population that huge it's impossible. You can't support it without an unbelievably sophisticated and reliable water system. So how in the world did they do it? Well, the Romans were absolute masters of systemization. They took the tech the Greeks were using and just scaled it up with military precision. This wasn't just about building a few big aqueducts. No, it was about creating complex distribution grids inside the cities and, crucially, setting up a professional administration to run the whole shebang. It was a true empire-wide water machine.
And running it was not a side gig. The curator aquarum, the water commissioner, was a super prestigious, high-ranking official. One of the most famous guys to hold the job was Sextus Julius Frontinus. He didn't just manage the system, he studied it, he improved it, and he literally wrote the book on Roman waterworks, a book we still have today. Just listen to what Frontinus himself said. He felt not just diligence, but devotion to his job. That really tells you everything about the Roman mindset. For them, providing water wasn't just plumbing, it was a sacred public duty. They set a standard for civic works that would last for centuries. Okay, so there's this really common myth that after Rome fell, Europe just plunged into a dark age, right? That all this amazing knowledge was just lost. The assumption is that for 1,000 years, nobody built anything cool. But when it comes to water, that story just isn't true. So let's just ask it directly. Did progress really grind to a halt after Rome? When you look at water engineering, the answer is a huge, resounding no.
Far from it. The innovation was incredible, even if it wasn't on an empire-wide scale. You've got London building its great conduit in the 13th century. Bologna created this massive network of man-made canals. And all over Europe, from Bruges to Granada, cities were coming up with their own really sophisticated local solution.
But let's zoom in on one of the most amazing examples of all, Siena, Italy. Just try to picture the challenge here. You're building a major city on 3 steep hills, hundreds of meters above sea level, and there's no major river anywhere nearby. Seriously, where do you get your water? So the Sienese dug a system of underground aqueducts called bottini to bring water to their public fountains. But here's the absolute genius part. Their fountains were built in tiers. The top basin had the purest water for drinking and cooking. Then the overflow would cascade down to a second basin for horses and animals. And the final overflow? It filled a third basin for laundry and other industries. I mean, that is a masterclass in water conservation and reuse, designed almost 1,000 years ago.
Okay, so why does any of this ancient history matter to us right now? Because these aren't just cool stories. These historical marvels hold some profound lessons that are incredibly relevant to the water crises we're facing today.
And this ingenuity wasn't just in Europe. Over in the Americas, the Inca had these highly organized community-based systems to manage water for their farms. They even tracked their resources meticulously using the quipu, this amazing system of knotted cords that was basically a physical database for their entire empire.
And that brings us to a really sharp contrast. These ancient systems were often models of sustainability. Think about it. They used gravity, not power-hungry pumps. They designed for reuse from the get-go, like we saw in Siena. They focused on local self-sufficiency, which made them resilient. Meanwhile, a lot of our modern systems are super centralized and, frankly, pretty fragile.
So this leaves us with a really provocative thought. We're always looking to the future for some new tech to solve our problems. But what if some of the smartest, most sustainable solutions are already in our past? The blueprint is right there. The real question is, can we be as smart, as resourceful, and as devoted as our ancestors were?